All right, guys, so we want to talk about a topic without actually talking about the topic.
Well, we're going to talk about the topic, but we're not going to do what we're talking about.
All right, so here's the thing, and I just want to bring this up to everyone. I'm not trying to be, I guess, mean or aggressive or rude, but like we have been getting a lot of feedback about cursing on the podcast. And I just want to first say that if you would like a curse-free experience, just go to the main channel. The main channel has no cuss words.
The main YouTube channel, where we post all of our wheelchair videos.
We post all the videos, and even in the podcast group, we tend to like post up like funny memes and funny videos, and like we're more inappropriate there. Like this is not the main channel. Like, yes, we do have brands that sponsor us on here, and that's cool because they're cool with us doing whatever.
Yeah, but the point is, I think there's a lot of people commenting on it, and that is like, it seems like it's a lot of people, but really it's not a lot because we're getting, like 1,000 people listening to each episode, ish. And there's like one or two comments about cussing. Obviously, I'm sure that there's people that aren't messaging.
Maybe that you've seen. No, I get a lot of private messages about it.
Oh yeah, true, on private messages. But I've seen some stuff in the Facebook group, and I've seen some reviews on iTunes and stuff like that about, I think the show's great. I just wish they wouldn't cuss so much or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I had the same feedback when I first started my podcast. But Richard and I listen to a ton of podcasts, and all the podcasts that we listen to pretty much swear. Pretty much all of them are pretty heavy on swearing. And granted, a lot of them are comedy podcasts, so like that kind of comes with the territory. But I would say that the reason why people come to a podcast is because it's 100% unfiltered.
Absolutely.
And when you cuss,
unfiltered, uncensored. And
when you cuss, you're basically sending like a dog whistle to the audience of saying like, yo, I ain't gonna sugarcoat this. I'm not gonna talk about, I'm not trying to spin this anyway. I'm spitting my true feelings, and that's why I'm talking so loosely.
And this is audio first, so we use cursing to grab your attention and to invoke emphasis on things we're trying to say and to deliver passion. And
but we also are throwing in F-bombs unnecessarily sometimes, for sure.
Yeah, but that's just how we talk, though. Like the whole point of a podcast is to make the viewers feel like they're in the room with us hanging out.
But the only reason why I bring that up is I think some people can make the argument like, no, you guys are cussing every 2 seconds, so when you do it, actually, it's not having real emphasis because you do it all the time, so it doesn't even have any meaning anymore.
Okay, decent argument. I'll bite, but I also think about even censorship in the sense of like, when you listen to a song and they change the lyric, or you listen to you're watching a TV show on a network and they beep it.
You know exactly what they're saying.
You know what they're saying anyway. Are your ears just so fragile that you can't take a word? Like we're gonna do this whole segment about cursing without cursing, so the people that do not like cursing will actually listen to it and hopefully understand the perspective that we're coming from here. Because I know for me, like, I speak with intensity and with passion, and I cuss. Dude, I cuss in front of my mom. You know what I mean? Like, even when I was like in like corporate America or whatever, on the clock with customers, I might every now and then, but only after I kind of gauged who I was talking to.
Yeah, exactly. You definitely can.
And like my management, obviously, like when we were behind the store, in the back of the store, and we were closing down, like there's always opportunities to curse, and I don't think it's bad. I don't think and some people are like, oh, well, don't say GD. That's taking the Lord's name in vain. Well, I'm not a religious person. I don't believe in that kind of thing, and maybe you do. And I'm sorry if that upsets you, and I'm sorry if that offends you. But again, like, it's a word, and we're not using it for like hate, or we're not using it to like be rude or be mean or be negative. It's literally, I think it's more insulting when I'm talking to someone like, oh man, shut the F up. And I'm like, just say it. Like, why did you, like,
yeah.
Why don't you have to just say it?
To get deeper into it, I think a lot of it has to do with, because obviously we're in the United States. There's a lot of puritanical values that have been like very closely tied in with our nation.
We were founded by prudes. Like the reason,
founded by prudes.
Like the reason the Puritans, literally think about the word Puritans, moved from UK, Britain to here was to escape and create their own religion. They created their own here, and it's like,
well, it wasn't to create their own religion, but yeah.
Well, that was one of the reasons they wanted to do it. Was to
freedom of religion,
have their own sect, to be able to do. So they didn't want to always like
but
do whatever the traditional religious values were or whatever. So it's like that's why sexuality is also like, although it's used extremely heavy in advertising, like just in regular, community, it's like, shh, don't talk about the sex. It's like, don't say 4-letter words. And it's like, come on, people. Like,
well, it's interesting because I've been listening to this podcast called Catlick. It's by this dude named B.T. Harmon that lives in Cabbagetown, and it's this whole I don't even know how to describe it. It's almost kind of like true crime, but like it's retelling history. And one of the interesting things that one of the main stories that's pervasive is about like this Black Jack the Ripper, this serial killer that was in Atlanta in like the early 10s, and I think it was like 1910s, which isn't that long ago if you think about it.
Not long
and
at all.
like no one, it's crazy because I'm hearing these stories for the first time. I'm like, I've never heard this before. But one of the funny things that he talks about is like he reads a lot of newspapers from the time so that he can actually give like a real sense of like what was happening. And one of the things that he said was like, anytime they ever talked about like a rape in the newspaper, like they'd just say it was like assault, or like they'd never mention the word sex or anything like that, even in like the 1910s and stuff, because it was so frowned upon to talk about that publicly.
Like a woman got attacked in the park alone at night, and it's like, oh, you mean she got raped?
It's funny because if you think about it, I mean, you don't even have to think about it that hard. It's like the only reason why any of us here exist is because of sex, right? Like, and it's just so funny that it was such a taboo subject that they didn't even want to talk about it. But meanwhile, everyone's doing it behind closed doors, because if they weren't, none of us would exist, bro. Like, there's children walking around. How do you think they came around? Because everyone had sex. So it's just like so silly, because we have these things that we keep behind closed doors, and we say like, no, you can't do this in public. It's frowned upon. It's against the Lord. It's against this, blah, blah, blah. But it's kind of like, what, you're saying that it's wrong to do this because of your values. Well, what if my values say it's not wrong? Which set of values is the right one? It's kind of like, I think all religions are fine as long as it works for you. Well, what if my religion says yours is a lie?
Well, that's the argument. A lot of people use religion as a base argument.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where even we could dive into like offense, or like being offended. Like, people think that you can give offense. I don't think that's true. I think you can only receive offense. And what I mean,
take offense.
Yeah, take offense. And I guess what I mean by that is there are some people literally that would be offended if I said the world was round. They would be utterly offended. Am I going to stop saying the world is round? No, because they're wrong. In the same way that like, I'm not going to stop cussing because you're upset, because you're offended. That sounds like a personal problem. That sounds like you're the one who needs to do some work on you. And
because if the one thing that you don't like is just that I'm saying a few quote unquote bad words, and you're just ignoring the rest of what we're saying, then like you said, it's kind of like, that sounds like it's on you versus us.
And it's like, if you want to plug your ears and run away and turn this off, fine. If you want to, like go hide in the corner, it's funny. And I found usually it's like people that are usually more conservative and people that are usually a little bit older are the ones that take such offense to swearing. But in the same breath, they'll be like, gosh, can you believe all those millennials? They get just so offended all the time. Like, I can't even say that blah, blah, blah. And they get so offended. Like, they get
snowflakes.
Those snowflakes. And it's like, you're a snowflake. Like, if you, like, I don't know.
If you're offended by the F word,
yeah,
you are a snowflake.
Like, I just get tired of this whole, like, don't cuss because I want to watch your stuff. And I'm like, okay, that's why we don't cuss on the main channel. Like, we used to cuss, and very rarely would we cuss. And then we got some advice from someone who said, hey,
what do you think?
Maybe you guys shouldn't cuss as much. And I'm like, okay, I'll think about it. And I thought about it for a long time. We didn't implement it for a while. And then I thought, okay, maybe this person has a point, because we might be like messing with our own money here. Like, we might be potentially, because like we want to work with brands that sell to kids, And if brands sell to kids, that automatically makes them a family-friendly brand, and family-friendly brands want to advertise in family-friendly places. And
why is cussing not family-friendly though? That's kind of the interesting thing. I want you to keep going, but it's like
I would like you to dive into that.
Why, like, should kids be allowed to cuss? Anyways, keep going though.
And I want to dive in on that too. So, it's a family, friendly thing. So we thought, okay, we'll clean up the main channel, but we're definitely going to keep going on the podcast. From the beginning, this podcast is named the Wheels to Walking Podcast, but any of you guys that listen know that this content is very different from what we put on the main channel. Main channel is very precise. It's 10 to 15 minutes long. It's usually one topic, one title. It's all wheelchair specific all the time. This is multiple topics, not wheelchair specific
all the time.
Current event
like
stuff.
Today we don't even really have any wheelchair topics except for the bloopers that we're going to go through. But yeah, it's funny because I think a lot of people for example, I used to listen to Casey Neistat's podcast, and it would piss me off when he would beep the cuss words. Cause I'm like, dude, just say, I'm not a child. I can hear what you're trying to say. And it's funny because on his YouTube channel, he wouldn't really cuss very much. And then on his podcast, him and his wife, when they get together, they're like, his wife especially is like a sailor mouth.
Would you know the story behind why he doesn't cuss on the main channel?
Well, I mean, I don't know the main story.
It was a similar situation to us. Someone came up to him at a conference or an event and was like, I love your videos. I love what you have to say about life, but I can't show it to my kids because you cuss. And he was like, fair enough. And that was that.
But the thing is, it was like they were doing like a sponsorship with Anchor on his podcast and stuff. And like Anchor was producing it and they didn't want to be producing a show. I don't know. It was like a weird situation where.
But that's where we have the benefit of being able to say what we want to say. Because we're not controlled by a network. We are the network. We're the distributors. Like we do everything.
And that's why I loved his Twitch channel. He only did it for like a few weeks, but he was Twitch streaming like every day. And I loved it because it was 100% unfiltered. It was just him hanging out, talking with his friends. And I'm like, this is what I want to hear. This is what I want to see. I want to see Casey with his shoes off and like how he would be if there was no cameras around.
Super uncurated.
And that's how we want this show to feel more, is like, we don't want it to feel like Richard's reading from a script or anything like that. Like, I mean, or
we're trying to make a video. We're just trying to kick it, man.
Yeah, some of our videos, like literally we're like reading from a script and we're trying to like keep it short and concise. And this is the place where you come to hang out with us and get to know us better. And for better or for worse, in real life, we tend to swear a decent bit.
And again, it's not without. Like people,
we understand
people will say the F word is lazy. They're like, the F word's lazy because that means you're not articulate and you can't think of other things to say. And sure, if I was going F the effing F and F that and F this and F, sure, you're right. But we don't do that. We use it for emphasis. We use it mostly for an expression. Like it's.
I don't know. I'm not going to defend the fact that I've been lazy on the podcast and just said the F word because I've been like lazy with it.
I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm
not
disagreeing with that either.
I don't even think. Yeah. I tend to throw it around, but the thing is like
we do that in real life.
Yeah, we're doing that in real life. Like I don't think we need to defend it and be like, I only use the F word when I'm trying to put severe emphasis on something. That's BS because I don't do that. Like I use it all the time, but it's because I think when you are just throwing it around all the time, that's a sign that you're literally just saying what's on your mind. Like you're not trying to like package it in any sort of way. And whether you want to call it lazy or not, that's up to you. But I don't know.
So but that was sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say like, as far as, whether you think it's wrong or right to do it, I think, language is kind of an interesting topic because, like, for example,
it's monkey sounds.
it is monkey sounds because everything is in context, right? If I go to Italy and I say the F word, I'm not gonna say it because we're trying to like not say it during this segment because so hopefully everyone will listen to it. But no one's gonna bat an eye because it doesn't like mean anything there, right?
There, yeah.
If I said another word over there that I didn't even know was a bad word and I accidentally say it and everyone. it's funny because I could say that here and no one will bat an eye. And it's literally, like you said, it's just noises. And whether you want to be offended by it or not, obviously language does have meaning behind it. Like there's no denying that language is a huge part of like how we interact. And like without language, we wouldn't have advanced as a society. And there are implications. If you just boil it down to noises, that's kind of a silly argument. I agree. But at the end of the day, it's like, if you are choosing to not listen to the podcast simply because of a few different words that we're using, maybe this podcast isn't for you, and like that's okay. And I think that's kind of the decision that I had to come to with my podcast as well, was like, you know, I don't know the best way to success, but I know the quickest way to failure is trying to please everybody. And I think that if we started to try to be squeaky clean and we're always trying to catch ourselves, like a second ago, you know, I almost said it, but then I'm like, oh, I almost said it. Oh, if we were trying to like censor ourselves all the time,
dancing around words is so annoying.
Our biggest fans and our biggest people that watch us would be like, dude, I don't like this anymore. I liked them when they were just like free flowing. I don't know.
And I wanted to touch on something that you mentioned about the idea of like kids cussing, and
Yeah.
I'll even bring Casey back into it. So Casey was on Phil's podcast, and
Philip DeFranco.
Yeah, Casey Neistat was on Philip DeFranco's podcast, and he was talking because they both have kids around the same age, and those kids play together, and they were talking about cussing. He's like, "Do you let your kids cuss?" And he says, "Yeah, if it's a good cuss." He goes, "If it actually like fits the situation." He was saying how he was at a grocery store, he was in line, there was 10 people in line, they were in the back of the line, there was one register, and his little daughter looked at him and goes, "Daddy, this is an S show." And he's like, I can't be mad at her because she's right. It is an S show. It is a complete disaster. And yeah, sure, she's 4, 5, 6. I don't even know how old Franny is right now, but he's like, she just was like, wow, this is an S show. And it's like, yep, you are correct. Like that is accurate. And you know, I even think about like how Gary Vee talks about like cussing. He's like, I cuss in front of my friends, I cuss in conferences, I cuss in business meetings. He's like, that's just how I talk. And he's like, I want to be the most authentic version of myself at all times. And the only way I can do that is to cuss. And if you don't like me cussing, that means you don't like me being authentic. And if you don't like me being authentic, then I guess we can't be friends. Like, it's like, this is my authentic self. Like,
and it's funny too, because he's talked about like he's talked about values, right? And it's like, if you say you shouldn't do that because this, and he's like, well, my values don't line up with you, so like I completely disagree. It's like, if you think, you know, my kid should be doing this thing because it's quote unquote the right thing to do, maybe I don't think that's the right thing to do. Maybe society or a bunch of people agree with you, but like that's not how I see it.
Yeah, what I value is different from what you value.
You can get kind of hippie-ish with it, because you can be like, let's pull back for a second and be like, yo, dude, what is right and wrong? And like, you know, it's just society, bro. Society's just told us it's just all the puritanical stuff from way back when. It's just dripped into society, man. You can do whatever you want. And I think, again, a lot of it is like these puritanical Christian values that have permeated society. And I think for the vast majority, a lot of those things and intentions have been good for society, especially American society. You see a lot of countries that are not doing so hot. Maybe the moral compass of that country is very skewed. And I think that the moral compass of the United States, for the most part, people tend to be good people for the most part. I think we've seen the ugly side of a lot of that recently. And we'll get into that later. But I think that for the most part, a lot of these values, and I would say growing up in a Christian household and all that, like I'd say I definitely benefited more than I didn't. And I think that growing up in a group of people, in a community of people that value right and wrong, and, you know, try to make you the best person you can be, I think that's great. I think you should always strive to be a better person. And I mean, for the amount of times that you can choose to offend people or not, I think you should probably choose to not. Like, if you know that someone will take offense to something that you're saying, like, probably don't say it especially if you don't believe it. You know, if you're just trying to rile people up.
Right.
I think that that's a part of being respectful. Like, obviously, I could go around and just start screaming the N-word, and you're like, oh, you're just choosing to be offended by that. Ha ha, you're the dummy. And it's like, no, that's not really how this works.
That's called being hateful.
And I can agree with that. I think people can say, like, you're just throwing it around because you're trying to be edgy and blah, blah, blah. And I assure you that is not what we're trying to do. We truly are just trying to, you know, at the end of the day, we like to have fun on this podcast. Like, we come here and we have a silly goose time. We're being silly. We're being fun. And I think that
some weeks we'll be working so hard. This is the only time we hang out is on the podcast.
Yeah,
you know? So it's fun. We like it.
And if you are sitting there and thinking like, you know, oh, they're just, you know, whatever, and you're still going to end up taking offense to it, we're sorry, but we're not going to really change the format of the podcast. And we can try to be more intentional with our cussing and try not to be so lazy. I can definitely say that I'll try to do that. But at the end of the day, I personally don't think swearing is offensive. If I hear someone swear, I don't think,
it doesn't even register.
The thing for me,
it doesn't even register. Like,
is I go, oh, this guy's cool.
Yeah,
you know, I go, this guy's real.
I see people around me. Like, if I'm having a conversation, especially in a group, and someone cusses, I only noticed if someone cusses if someone flinches. Mm-hmm. Like, if someone flinches, I'm like, oh, someone must have cussed, and oh, you're those kind of people.
Yeah.
You know? Hope you enjoyed that clip. If you'd like to see the full episode, click right here. If you'd like to subscribe, click here. If you'd like more clips, we got 2 more right over here.